"Wow, you finally brought something to dinner?" My cousin laughed. He lifted his glass and looked around the table. "Careful, everyone. If he ordered the cheapest thing again, we might have to split his bill." A few people chuckled. My aunt shook her head like she'd heard the joke before. "Honestly, you've always been like that," she said. "Quiet, cheap, always saving." I kept my fork in my hand and didn't respond. It was my mother's birthday dinner. 20 people at a long restaurant table, wine glasses clinking, phones out, everyone performing happiness. And somehow I had become the punchline again. But what none of them knew was that inside my bag was a single envelope. And before that dinner ended, every person at that table would look at me very differently. If you've ever stayed quiet while people misunderstood you, you'll understand why I waited. For most of my adult life, I was the one who handled things quietly. I didn't talk about it. When my younger brother lost his job, I covered 3 months of his rent. When my aunt's car broke down, I paid the mechanic. When my cousin's tuition payment fell short, I sent the difference. No speeches, no announcements, just transfers, receipts, silence. I never thought of it as generosity. It just felt like responsibility. Family helped family. But there was one rule I followed. I never kept score out loud. And maybe that was my mistake, because over time, something strange started happening. The more I helped, the less people seemed to notice. Until eventually, the story about me changed. According to them, I was the quiet one who never contributed, the one who always saved his money, the one who never picked up the bill. That story spread slowly. Dinner conversations, side comments, little jokes, and I let it happen. Because correcting people in front of others always felt small. But that birthday dinner was different. Halfway through the meal, the waiter placed the checks near the center. My cousin leaned back in his chair. "All right," he said loudly, "let's see who's actually paying tonight." Then he looked directly at me, or maybe someone's just going to sit quietly again. That was the first escalation. The table laughed again, not cruel laughter, but comfortable laughter. The kind people use when they think a story about you is already settled. I didn't react. I took a sip of water and kept eating. But the moment stayed in the air. Then my aunt added something that made the room even quieter. "You know," she said, smiling politely, "some people in this family work really hard, and some people just watch their wallets." That one landed. Because now everyone was listening. I could feel the eyes around the table, waiting, expecting a defense, but I didn't give them one. Instead, I asked the waiter for another minute and reached into my bag, not dramatically, just calmly, because there was something about that moment that finally made me curious. How long had this version of me existed in their heads, and how far would they go with it? The second escalation came faster than I expected. My brother laughed awkwardly. "Relax," he said to the table. "He's just careful with money." Then he looked at me. "You always were. It wasn't meant to hurt." But something about hearing it from him felt different, because I remembered the 3 rent payments, the phone calls, the quiet transfers at midnight. I realized something in that moment. Not one person at that table knew, and maybe that was my fault. But there was another realization too. They weren't mocking me because they were cruel. They were mocking me because the story they believed had never been challenged. And that's when I finally slid the envelope onto the table. Not aggressively, just slowly, right between the glasses. Inside was a clean stack of printed receipts, dates, transfers, notes, years of quiet payments, no commentary, just numbers. I didn't say anything at first. I simply opened the folder and pushed the top page forward. That was the mini climax. My cousin leaned closer. His smile faded as he read the first line, then the second, then the third. "Wait," he said softly. The table leaned in. Someone asked what he was looking at. He didn't answer. He just turned the page toward them. There was a payment to my brother, 3 months of rent, a mechanic invoice for my aunt's car, a tuition transfer with my cousin's name on it, then another page and another, each one dated, each one quiet. The room slowly stopped making noise. Forks lowered, glasses stayed untouched, no one laughed anymore, and I still hadn't said a word. About halfway through the stack, my mother looked up at me. Her expression changed. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" she asked quietly. I shrugged. I didn't think it mattered. The main climax came seconds later. My cousin pushed his chair back slightly. "Hold on," he said. He started scanning the pages faster now. "And this is my tuition?" I nodded once. My brother turned another sheet. "And this was my rent?" Another nod. My aunt stared at the mechanic invoice. "That repair cost? I thought insurance covered that." "No," I said calmly. "It didn't." Silence filled the table, the kind of silence that forces people to rethink things. Finally, my cousin exhaled. "So, you weren't saving money," he said slowly. I shook my head. I just wasn't announcing where it went. No one knew what to say after that, because the story they'd been repeating for years didn't match the evidence sitting in front of them. And the strange part? I didn't feel angry, just lighter, because I realized something important in that moment. Sometimes people don't misunderstand you out of malice. They misunderstand you because silence lets assumptions grow. Quick question for you while you're listening. If you were in that seat, would you have said something earlier or waited like I did? I'm honestly still not sure which is better. The waiter returned a few minutes later. He looked at the quiet table. "Are we splitting the bill?" My cousin looked at the receipts again, then at me. And for the first time all night, he smiled differently. "No," he said. "We'll handle it." The checks disappeared. The conversation slowly restarted. But the tone had shifted. No jokes, no teasing, just quiet respect. Later that night, my brother walked with me to the parking lot. "I didn't know," he said. "I know," I replied. He hesitated. "You should have told us." Maybe he was right. But I also realized something during that dinner. You don't always need to defend yourself loudly. Sometimes the truth just needs the right moment to sit on the table. And when it does, people usually figure the rest out themselves. Since that night, the jokes stopped. Not because I demanded it, but because the story about me changed, and maybe that's the real lesson. Quiet strength works. But quiet strength with clear boundaries works even better. If you've ever had a moment where people finally saw the truth about you, I'd love to hear about it. Stories like that remind us we're not the only ones who've been misunderstood.